Hi, I'm Kerry Watson, and normally I hold up the book I'm about to review, but I made a mistake and returned to the library before doing this video. But I shall stick a picture of it up here, or maybe here. And the book is Crooked Heart by Lissa Evans, a British writer. And this is the second in a trilogy that began with Old Baggage and ends with V for Victory. It's a loosely connected trilogy. I've only read the first one, not the third. It's set during World War II, the Blitz, London, and it concerns a 10-year-old boy who becomes an orphan and is acquired, or does he acquire, a woman named Vera Sedge. They're both lost in the world, have had very bad luck thanks to the war and to, in Vera's case, a bad marriage. And they embark on a series of small-scale adventures in trying to survive physically and economically in the war, which involves some crafty and illegal work, soliciting donations for non-existent charities. Now, the main point of interest for me in this book and in this author, actually two things. First of all, her prose, her style is excellent. It's what you might call the literary or prose equivalent of received pronunciation in British English. I don't know if that's a fair analogy, but what it amounts to is that she, like what seems like a fair number of British female authors, are so very precise with their language, so economical. There's never a word in that's there that's in excess, or a chapter or a sentence. Everything is carefully considered. Similes and metaphors are tight, not excessive. It's really polished writing to a very fine degree. Now, having said that, one area that some people might slightly object to is that the polishing sometimes is to maybe too high a degree. Lissa Evans' background is of a TV director and producer, and certainly the three books I've read by her feel like they could also be scripts. And in that sense, quite literally in the case of Crooked Heart, you could almost hand that to a director and say, here's your script, without actually altering it into script format. And as part of that, the plot is very convenient. And in that, I mean, it ends happily, relatively happily, as happily as a story set in London in World War II can end. And for instance, to give one example, you know someone's going to die in the book. I mean, it is the Blitz after all. Bombs are dropping everywhere. But you quickly realize, given the way the story is structured, that the two most suitable people to die will die, and sure enough, they do. There isn't much guesswork involved. So that's a very convenient way also to set it up for the sequel. So in that sense, it falls just short of being a really good novel because it lacks it's excellent in its own way, but it lacks the hard edges or the unexpected twist, perhaps, that we might see in more serious fiction. The other thing of interest about this author is that she is writing in a genre with this trilogy and one other book, Their Finest Hour and a Half, which was filmed as Their Finest, in a genre which is peculiar to the UK, which I would call romantic working class historical fiction. That's a mouthful, and it's an odd subgenre that only seems to exist in England. And it's romance fiction, historical, but not of the Regency variety. It's not Jane Austen influenced. The stories are normally set from about, say, 1900 up to as late as the early 60s. And they center on women who are working class, lower middle class, and who suffer, in addition to the usual romantic entanglements, real world economic, financial problems, such as job loss, or their own businesses going out of business, and historical events like wars, like strikes, the general strike in the 1920s, or just the huge transitions British society made throughout the last century. Those impact their personal lives. Unlike a lot of romance fiction, which is divorced from that kind of reality for the most part, and focuses entirely on character and plot within a small environment. It's very strange. Now, I haven't read any of these. I only know them from one of my jobs at the library years ago, was delivering a lot of this kind of fiction to shut-ins at the Toronto Public Library. So I certainly read the backs of all these books, and even would sometimes dip in and read an ending or two just to get the gist of what they're about. But it's interesting that that this romance fiction, which we were generally regard as a pretty slight endeavor, in this UK subgenre, actually deals with real world issues. And what other country has romance fiction that highlights working class people? Now, Lissa Evans is actually working in this same subgenre at an elevated level. But also, she is also an example of, and the more run-of-the-mill romance writers in the genre are an example of what some writers and analysts have called the curse of nostalgia in British society. These are modern writers who are looking for their stories in the past, and they cannot, or rather, they find a ready market in the UK for stories set in the good old bad days, as it were, the Depression, World War II. There is something in the British public that finds these stories comforting, endearing, warming to the soul. I'm not sure what it is entirely. The book I last reviewed, Bourneville by Jonathan Coe, he's a writer who has dealt with this subject in fictional terms, pointing out the at times poisonous nature of this lust for nostalgia in the British public. And it's interesting that, and here is an example of Lissa Evans, who very successful, and a very good writer who is doing it at a higher level. But again, it's curious, and I wonder if she will continue in this vein, or maybe set something in the modern era, something within the last 40 years, say. That would be revolutionary. Anyway, they're well-written books. She's a good writer, and check one or two of them out. I think actually of the three I've read, probably Old Baggage is the best. And anyway, plug time. Skeleton Palms, noir, mystery, thriller, violent. Enjoy. Bye.